Elvis, there's a story I have to tell to the world that's never been told before. Elvis, one rainy, hot summer night here in Nashville about 7 or 8 years ago, what you did for me will always be a part of my life forever, as you will be for millions. You see, I was sitting on the back steps of RCA's Studio B that hot summer night, I guess trying to get out of the rain, not knowing it was you inside the studio recording, when some man opened the door and I stood up, and he asked me if I would go after some candy bars. I guess maybe he thought I worked there as a cleanup boy or something, but I really didn't. When I got back to the studio door, the candy bars in the paper bag was wet, and so was I. You see, I hadn't had a car for about 6 years. I knocked on the door, and the same man let me in. Then I heard a voice ask that I bring the candy bars into the studio. When I saw it was you that I got the candy bars for, I became very weak all over. I guess it was too much for a poor boy and a nobody like me to be bringing candy bars to a king like you. I remember you asked me my name and shook my hand and thanked me. And then you reached in your pocket and gave me a $20 bill and said, "Here, I want you to have this." You never did know it, Elvis, but that $20 bill, I guess in a big way, saved my life. You see, I'd been sleeping in the back of an old wrecked station wagon, just up from the studio, for about 11 days, with only change in my pocket. And to be honest, I really hadn't eaten for almost 2 days. I never did see you again after that, but I want the whole world to know, if they don't already, the many little and big things you did for many people, such as myself. Elvis, I only wish I could have the chance again today to run to that same little store in the rain to get you some more candy bars.
The mortal death of Elvis Aaron Presley on August 16th certainly has done very little to stunt his global popularity. As nearly 30,000 fans swarmed to his Memphis home of Graceland to commemorate the 20th anniversary of his death, we are reminded that the King of Rock is bigger than ever. From his humble beginnings in Tupelo, Mississippi, to his outrageous standing-room-only gigs in Vegas, Elvis Presley was the first and biggest rock star of all time, winning fans of all ages with his stirring, soulful voice, swinging hips, and smooth Southern charm. Those doubting Elvis's title as the King need only witness his 94 gold singles, 40-some gold albums, and movies collectively grossing over $180 million. Elvis's impact on rock itself is, of course, incalculable. Fashioning himself after screen idols James Dean and Marlon Brando, Elvis transformed himself into rock's original rebel. He was also perhaps its greatest stage performer, and certainly the most imitated. From his nasty curled lips and shaking hips of the early years to the exhilarating supersonic karate chops later on, Elvis never relented, always giving 100% of himself to his adoring fans, his performances dynamic, electrifying, and deeply soulful. Presley was a true American icon. His unlikely rise to superstardom is a rock and roll Cinderella story straight from the Americana of Horatio Alger. He was the truck-driving good old boy made glorious, the blue-collar kid next door who adamantly loved his mother and selflessly served his country when called. While the king may have lived in the lap of luxury, he still loved munching on fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches and playing tackle football with the boys. Whether it's Elvis sightings, skydiving Elvi, or Lisa Marie marrying Wacko Jacko, it seems that the king's smoky gaze is forever upon us.
Tamer than you were, I think. You had a more wild image. Am I correct in thinking that?
Well, I think Elvis was a little bit more conservative than I was. He hid himself more, I would say, from the public than I did. I was more wide open than Elvis. I never hid anything. Or whatever I did, I never tried to hold it a secret.
There's one story that is, I read constantly about you, that you went to Graceland, you had a gun, the sheriff comes, takes you away. What is the truth behind that story, if there is any, but what happened?
Elvis, in the last days there, he was, well, about 15 times he called me on the phone, you know. And he said, "Jerry, I got to see you. It's very important. I'm very depressed, and I want to talk to you, you know." And he'd talk to you bad. And I just couldn't visualize Elvis Presley being down and out, depressed about anything. You know. I shunned him off and I didn't go, you know. And one night he called me down at the Vapors Club there in Memphis, about a mile or so from his home. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and to admit the truth about it, I was drinking a lot of champagne that night. I don't drink champagne that much. And it made me a little wild, you know.
A little bit.
And so, yeah, really. And so, to say the least. So I went out and got my Lincoln car, you know. I said, well, I'm going to come down and see you, so I'll be there in a minute, you know. So I walked outside, and Mr. Ford, Charlie Foreman, on the Vapors. He said, Jerry, just a minute, I have a present for you. And he gave me this .38 Dillinger pistol. It was brand new. Had never been fired. I still have it. Never has been fired. And I said, oh, thank you, Mr. Ford. And I went to put it in my glove compartment. He said, no, put this on the dashboard. If you conceal it in your glove compartment, it's against the law. Run you down, it's against the law. But if you put it on your dashboard, not conceal it, it's not against the law. Take it home. I said, okay, well, I forgot I was going by Elvis's house.
So you drove by with the gun out.
So I drove by there and the gun was there on the dashboard. And when I turned into Elvis's house, the front end of that Lincoln looked like it was a mile long to me. And I misjudged it, and I run into his gate. And he had hired a new guard. Travis wasn't on the gate. His uncle. He had a new guard on the gate. So he come running out there, and I hit the gate, and it was shaking all over there like he was doing a show on there, you know. And it was kind of funny to me, I don't know. And he said, well, what do you want? I said, well, Elvis called me and want to see me. He said, yeah, who are you? I said, well, just tell him Jerry Lee's here, you know. And he saw that gun on the dashboard of the car. And he ran back and he called the law. And so I'm sitting there, you know, and a minute later, the law, about 5 or 6 squad cars surrounded my car, you know. I'm sitting there looking at it, and I was really loaded. And I went to put the seat back on the car, and instead of putting the seat back, I was putting the window down. I didn't know it. I threw this champagne bottle out the window, and I thought it was down, and knocked the whole window clean out. So they knew I was loaded. And it was embarrassing. And I said, what are you going to do with that gun? You going to shoot Elvis Presley? I said, well, if you're silly enough to think that, I said, probably so.
That's very good.
And they said, get out of that car, the old kid. That was the deal on that. And Elvis waited and waited and waited on me. You know?
Was there ever any competition between the two of you? Did you ever feel that I mean, you're both, you know, the leaders of a movement, almost a revolution?
We considered ourselves both kings of rock and roll, so to speak. I mean, in our own way. He considered himself the #1 artist. I did too. And the honest thing, I'd done what I wanted to do. Elvis, he wanted to do the things I did, but he was scared too, and he tried to do it and hide it. And so I said, Elvis, you know, you ought to be your own man, do what you want to do. Don't let these people tell you what to do. Well, Elvis Presley was a fine person, and I missed him very much, and he was one of my dear friends, somebody I could depend on, you know?
When you talk about, as you saw yourself as, you both saw yourself as kings, a question I was wanting to ask you is, when the history of rock and roll is written, where will your place be?
Well, I was the first artist inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.